Anything related to one of my favorite characters, Batman, is super exciting to me, and DC has been releasing very high quality animated films featuring Batman, of course, and Superman and others, and I'm extremely excited to talk to you about a gorgeous, very well done animated film, Batman: The Long Halloween.
This is a waste of time.
The Long Halloween was released as a two-parter, and I had to wait to completely watch the entire thing to talk to you about it. It's a very exciting comic book that was done into an animated feature that is just a feast for the eyes. I have not seen this type of animation from a DC feature before, and it really pays off. It reminds you a little bit of Batman the Animated Series, but it has thick lines and not as much movement, and in fact it's not a very dynamic animated film. It's almost like watching a comic being animated but still have that feeling of reading a comic book. I haven't actually read the source material, which is a crime, and I'm going to pick it up as soon as I can, but the gist of the story is that this is in the early years of Batman being the justice fighter that he is. He has a close relationship with Batwoman, and crimes start happening in Gotham related to the Falcone family, where they're being killed one by a mysterious killer that leaves clues, but it's not very clear as to who it could be, and Batman is following the clues to find out who the killer is. At the same time, Dent is trying to do justice and actually put the bad guys in jail where they belong, and he feels more frustrated about the consequences of him not being able to put the bad guys in jail. And so it's this struggle of what justice really means and who the killer could be, and Batman's investigation through Gotham and all of the bad guys that were familiar from the Gotham and the Batman universe, and it does incredibly well at showing the detective process of Batman, how he tries to figure out who the bad guy is, who they could be, and him going and following clues. In fact, it's more of a detective story rather than an action-packed, Batman adventure that we're somewhat used to see from the Caped Crusader. There's a lot of very good voice acting, but what stands out to me, as I mentioned before, is the very crisp, very sharp, beautiful animation and the style that really makes things really pop and feel fresh. And in fact, I think if they did a series of this instead of an animated film, it would be a huge success. I think it has to do with the director.
This city is fallen, Alfred.
Chris Palmer is a fairly new director. He was in charge of Superman Man of Tomorrow, but his biggest experience is as a storyboard artist, and it shows. The way the movie plays out, it's almost as if it was beat by beat from a comic book, and I think he really is able to convey a lot with very little, and that's what storyboards do. They basically showcase action in just a frame and divide things in a very easy to understand and very easy to follow way. Of course, none of this would have worked without very good voice acting. Jason Eccles as Batman, I was actually surprised because I was trying to hear his voice in there. You have this iconic character as Batman, and a lot of the times they're played by very iconic voice actors. This time, Jason Eccles, by the way, he's not new to the Batman universe. He played Red Hood before. Anyway, Eccles really brings an interesting, youthful, yet worn Batman, and this is a Batman that again is not the justice fighter we are used to see. He is fairly new to the game. In fact, this is before we had any additions to the Batman family in terms of Robins, Batgirls, and such, and I really like what he brings to Bruce Wayne as well. In fact, this is fairly heavily focusing on Bruce Wayne's relationship and responsibilities within Gotham and how his family played a big role in the Falcone family and their rise to crime power. The other cool thing is that this focuses a lot, but I mean a lot, on how the criminal underground is very influential to the way Gotham develops, aside from the supervillains, which are also featured in this. But the Falcones really have done a lot, and the way this is played out and how Holiday is killing all of the Falcone family members is very interesting, and the why and the how is portrayed very well. The cool thing is that Batman, regardless of him being being very good at being a detective, he's just catching up. And the killer is always one step ahead of not only Batman, but also of the audience, because if you haven't read the comic book, which I haven't, it's very interesting to try to figure out who Holiday could be. And wow, it's really interesting. In fact, Batman goes in there into Arkham and tries to figure out from Calendar Man why is Holiday acting the way he or she could be acting, and how it is possible to catch this killer that is very clever at who he attacks and when. And so we are trying to do this catch-up game and playing detective alongside Batman, which is a very, very cool idea.
3 murders on 3 holidays. Each of the victims a Falcone associate, all shot with the same type of untraceable gun.
The other cool aspect of this is that almost every major villain from the Batman universe shows up here and has at least a cameo, and I feel that at a certain point, if you're not a fan of Batman and have read some of the material, you'll be wondering, who is this? Why they're here? Why are they acting this way? There were a lot of Easter eggs, but not that many explanations on the major villains, and I actually feel that might be a distraction for those who are new to the Batman universe and haven't read the comic books. But the fact is, they were portrayed very well, the animation was done greatly, and the voice acting, again, it's a big standout as to why this movie succeeds. Is this animated feature for everyone? Probably not. In fact, the length, not only it's a 2-parter, but each part it's fairly long, it's considerable, and I feel that this would succeed as a series and draw bigger attention and a bigger audience if it was done, you know, in 30, maybe 45-minute segments as a mini-series or something. And the length might be not something that you want to do in a film or, you know, something that would show on a big screen, but this wasn't made for the big screen. And so I feel fans like myself that really love DC animated films will love this because of the great, beautiful art, good soundtrack, fantastic voice acting, and a story that for me was very satisfying, well explained, and left no loose ends. The last thing I'm going to address is the relationship between Batman and Catwoman that was heavily featured here, and I really like it because it really shows that their, you know, past and their future is going to be interwoven regardless of what's happening and what could happen and who is gonna make it and who's not. And by God, it is a very clever way of putting the relationship in the middle of this whole very cool detective investigation, because you're starting to doubt everybody's motivations and why and how they're going to achieve their goals. I really enjoyed this film, and I think that at least give it a try. The first half hour of Long Halloween Part 1 will draw you in for the rest.
Have you ever seen this kind of money?
It's authentic.
Batman, The Long Halloween Part 1 and 2 are a great addition to a fantastic roster of DC animated films. I wish this was done as a series rather than a film because the pacing is not the best at times, but as a fan of any Batman content, I was super excited to see a lot of Easter eggs and callbacks to a lot of past and future of Batman and his universe. I really enjoyed the animation style, the voice acting, and the story, which had me alongside Batman trying to figure out who the killer was and what was their motivation. If you're new to DC animated stuff, I probably would say don't watch this film as your first feature film in this because it's actually very long. I would rather suggest you check out one of the fantastic Superman films that were done in the last couple of years. Otherwise, if you're a fan of anything Batman and you're not new to DC animated films, this is really going to be one of your favorites because it treats the characters right and the art just really stands out. If you have animated features from the DC universe that you would like for me to review, please let me know in the comments. I'm excited to see what you have in mind. I'm Jin from Get Me More, and you know where to find me. Thank you for watching.